but I don't know if that feeds to your computers. Does it? If
not to the computer.
Okay, well then we'll do it this way. I've got a printed handout, which I'd be very pleased to give you.
We're working on the technology.
We're solid, I understand. We're with you. We're in solidarity with you. What happened?
Thank you.
Sorry.
Do you have a flash drive?
I do have a flash drive. Yes, Mr. Layton, you want to go ahead and load that flash drive?
Yeah, I can do that.
Well, thank you once again. Thank you for this opportunity. I think it's been a little over a year since I've been here, so everybody looks so much younger than last time I saw you. So on the first slide or first page, just an introduction, I also wanted to introduce Justin Layton, who came with me here today. He is the interim public relations director for officer for Pierce Transit, and also he is our governmental relations officer. So I feel like a catcher in a baseball, not a football game, a baseball game who has a good backstop behind me. So our second slide is one that shows the area that Pierce Transit services. Also lists the jurisdictions that are served by Pierce Transit.
Are you on page 2?
I'm on page 2. This one right here.
So we're reading it backwards?
There you go.
It's stapled.
Stapled.
With the machine stapled in.
Okay, so we have 292 square miles, 13 towns and cities. That includes Joint Base Lewis McChord. It's 70% of Pierce County's population. Wanted to say that we were founded in 1979, and that was based on a 0.3% sales tax that came forth with popular vote. That's great to have it up there. Popular vote to fund public transportation. So 1979 is when it all started. And then some of you remember in 2002 we had Initiative 695, and it eliminated the motor vehicle excise tax. That affected a lot of our jurisdictions. Certainly also affected transit funding, and so that was replaced with an additional 0.3% sales tax to fund transit operations. I want to just say for educational purposes that the full authority is 0.9%, and right now we're at 0.6%. Should mention too that specific to Pacific, there's only 92 residents, I think, out of the 7,000 that I believe you have in Pacific that are in Pierce County, but that is a portion of your population. Okay, so next one, number 3. This is a picture of the 10-member board of commissioners. In fact, I just left a little bit early from one of our monthly meetings to get here. We represent jurisdictions within Pierce County. I happen to represent Pacific, Auburn, Ruston, Hillcrest, Stillicum, and Gig Harbor. While we are tasked with representing our specific jurisdictions, so in my case certainly Pacific, we also have to keep that broad interest of what is good for the agency overall in our decision making. Next slide, please.
It's not advancing.
Okay. Well, this is the one that shows the strategic plan and goal. I'll just mention that we added the last 3, economic development, sustainability, and an engaged workforce. But when you look at all of these goals, and I think back on my own town of Stillicum or your city of Pacific, these really are goals that are applicable to any type of a jurisdiction that's trying to do things right. Operational excellence, financial stability, we are doing that. Innovative solutions, we just have remade some of our routes to try to be of better service in areas that were under service. Community engagement, getting the public's involvement in what their needs are, the surveys and such. We know that we're an engine for economic development. Transportation is certainly part of that. Sustainability has to do with being very cautious about use of resources, and I'll talk about that briefly in a little bit. And the engaged workforce. We'll go on to the next slide, and that would be number 5. So number 5 shows a pie chart that I think is rather interesting and educational because it shows that 73% of our operating revenues come from sales tax. And you know that sales tax is subject to great volatility, as we all experienced starting about late 2008 and certainly in 2009. On the chart you can see that because of that, our sales tax dipped precipitously in 2009. What fluctuated up and down slightly until 2014, where we've made a pretty good comeback. But because of that, Pierce Transit was forced to make some pretty drastic reductions in our service. We cut hours 35%, which is absolutely drastic. There was quite a bit of cut in staffing, which included 31% that were in management. It didn't just come from bus drivers. So the good news is that our sales tax is on the rise, and that means that our income is growing for Pierce Transit. But we have to be very cautious in not overreacting to that because who knows exactly what the future holds. So we are cautiously expanding our operating hours, but doing so in a means that we feel would be very sustainable. Next slide. Would be on page 6. So we have been able to add some hours back. We had 4,000 that we had planned in the original budget, but we are doing well enough that we were able to add 12,000 more. We are allocating them to areas where there has been the most congestion for passengers, such as Route 1, our main spinal route that goes through Tacoma north-south. But we're also adding some additional weekend service that had been drastically cut. So we're pleased with that because this is what our ridership wants. They want to have access to buses. Page 7 will be the next slide that I'll talk about. And this is a recent survey that talks about who rides Pierce Transit. So it's interesting, the average age is 34. A large percentage, 39%, don't have a vehicle they can rely upon. 44% come from households who have an income that is really at the poverty level of below $20,000. Orca card users, that's good news. 62% are Orca card users. This is good. It's good for them and it's good for us because it's less hassle when somebody boards the bus, but it also saves them that they don't have to pay when they get on another bus. Transfers are automatic. So it's cost effective for anyone who does take the bus to get the Orca card. Customers are going to work 30% of the time, 22% of the time to school, college, 18% recreation, social activities, 60% shopping and errands, and then some are going on appointments. We are pleased that our surveys have said that people are pretty happy with the buses and that they're clean. They feel that the drivers are safe and confident. They feel good on the buses. I've also heard from outside of this area comments that our buses are very clean, and that's always good to hear. So next would be slide 8. This is basically talking about what we have. We have fixed route buses. These are the buses that are like Route 1 or 212 in the Stelicum that have a fixed route. They're predictable, and we had annual boardings last year of about 10.3 million. Shuttle paratransit is the one where people who are disabled are not capable of really boarding the usual bus for physical or mental perhaps reasons are brought in a shuttle, and that's something they schedule. This is our most expensive mode of transportation, by the way. They are 3% of our ridership, but 24% of our operating costs. And then van pool is something that we're very happy to see grow. It has actually grown a little bit over the years, and the total boardings there have been a little bit shy of 1 million. Next slide would be number 9, sorry. All right, so we do have a number of regional connectors. We connect pretty easily with, ultimately, with Kitsap Transit. King County Metro, probably more relevant for this area where you are quite a bit in King County. Sound Transit, and then down south with Intercity Transit, which services Olympia. We've got 10 regional bus routes. I just took one yesterday for the Avon race for the Cure up in Seattle. That was, the Coleman race for the Cure in Seattle. It's very convenient to do that. Don't have to worry about parking, and the price is good. We have over 17 local and regional transit centers, park and rides or connections. We connect with a couple ferry terminals, the one on Vashon and the one in my territory, Stellicum, going out to Anderson Island. Amtrak and Greyhound via the Tacoma Dome station. We have 4 Sounder stations now, and then we've got the Tacoma Link light rail. Slide number 10. So a little bit on the commitment to sustainability. Back in 1986, we were getting away from diesel fuel and going to the compressed natural gas. I want to point out that we are really doing well in what we pay for our fuel. It comes down to only 17 cents per gallon equivalent for the compressed natural gas. It's very, very cost effective for us to use it. 85% of our fleet is fueled by natural gas. And incidentally, we get these biogases from the Cedar Hills landfill. This is derived from the organic waste. It's food waste, for example, would be part of that. So we believe we're the first public transit agency in the nation to adopt renewable natural gas. We did this back in June of 2013. We also have hybrid electrics that have been purchased with federal grants. So we are doing well in that domain. Slide number 11. So the new things going on, we have a new CEO, Sue Dreyer, that just started with us 2 weeks ago. We're very pleased to have her on board. She has great credentials and is off to a wonderful start. A fair change is something that is being discussed. I do want to say one thing that was recently done that's very interesting. We updated and upgraded our fare boxes. And what happened when we did that is we did away with the paper transfer. Interesting, because before that, people would show up with actually on a ring, all these different colors of transfer tickets they had saved, and they just want to ask what was the color for that day. So you see that they were skirting the system by not really paying for transfers or even paying for the initial fare. While boardings were down, for example, in the month of March, 9.7%, fares went up 11.2%. And we think that's a reflection of people now being required to really pay the fare when they get on board instead of, frankly, being a bit fraudulent when they did that. So that has tightened things up, and I think that's really a good thing. We also see that the number of people using ORCA cards went up by about 6 percentage points as we adopted this new fare box policy. And one further one that I think makes a difference for people paying their fare is that when bus drivers now are off the bus, the doors are to be closed. That prevents people from just getting on board the bus and claiming they paid when maybe they didn't pay at all. So a few tightening things have improved things there. I won't say too much about the 2040 long-range planning. I'm going to skip through several of those things. I will say that we've got a new Route 4 that goes, a new spine that goes west-east that we think is going to be very successful. And then one further thing I want to comment on is that we have just installed cameras on the buses, which are a means of ensuring that our customers are safe, that our bus drivers are safe, and that if indeed there is an unfortunate incident that happens, such as an accident, there's verification as to what exactly happened, instead of the usual dispute that may be the outcome when there's a collision. I would welcome any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
One thing I noticed is on your operating costs, only 14% of your revenue comes from fares. That means 86% of it's subsidized. How do your fares compare to other transfers?
Oh, that's an excellent question, and it was a big topic of our meeting today. So our fares are pretty much in the ballpark for other agencies, except I would say that our paratransit, our shuttle rides, are not really quite up to par. They're only being charged 75 cents. Our fare right now for an adult, is it $2.25 or $2? All right, $2. So somebody who has a disability and is either a youth up to 18 or younger, or a senior citizen 65 or above, pays half of what the full fare is or less. That's by, I think the FTA requires that. So right now that fare is 75 cents. But that's also what we're charging our shuttle passengers. They are the most heavily subsidized of any category because one pickup costs, one boarding averages, I think, was it close to $50 per boarding, which is a lot. And so it's going to be a topic probably at our next transit board meeting as to whether or not we want to increase that fare, which would put it more in alignment with other fares, other agencies surrounding us.
So when I see the comparison of 14% of your budget comes from fares, how does that percentage relate to other transit authorities?
The ideal fare box recovery, we would like to see at least 20%. Most of them are about 20%.
Which is a national average is 20% fare box recovery.
So we're low, and we do want to work to increase that. We think that we're stepping that direction with the fare box change, which requires people boarding to actually pay the fare. But we also believe that we need to get the fares in alignment to be representative more of what the actual costs are.
Thank you.
Good observation.
Councilmember Garvey.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, why is it more around the cost of $50 to pick up on the?
It's the greatest expense of any bus is not the gasoline or the size of the bus, but it's the operator going out there. So when an operator goes out to a certain area to pick up only one person, then the cost of what we're paying that operator is divided by 1, as opposed to if we're on a fixed route and I've got 10 or 12 people on the bus, now it's divided by 12. And so if you're talking about the cost per boarding, it becomes much more expensive because often with paratransit, you're only picking up one person at a time.
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, presently we don't have any Pierce County transit in our southern Pierce County properties of the Pacific. But with the development of the Valentine and 8th Avenue Stewart Road and future development of that environment, as well as the North Pierce County MIC, the MIG, Sumner, and Pacific, I'm hoping for looking at future development of manufacturing. And I'm hoping that Pierce County at that point will start looking at the potential of putting routes in that environment so that we can have transit use from businesses and stuff like that.
One of the values that I've seen in action since I've been on the board, which is now about 18 months, I've been very impressed with their innovation. They do want to keep their ears to the rail and see where growth is in the county and then reach out to jurisdictions and other stakeholders to see what the needs might be. That's being done right now with the northeast part of Tacoma, where they really haven't had good bus service for a long time, and that discourages ridership. So you have to make sure that the needs of the community are met in a logical, good way. So yes, I would be hopeful as we see developments occur that our heads are turned in that direction too, to see what we can do to support that type of growth. Absolutely important. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We appreciate you coming in.